for various reasons, because you want to stand out. And the idea is to combine people from various backgrounds, all having to do something with mathematics and reality as far as we can. No? So it's mostly on invitation of the collaborations that I work with. And most people always say yes if I invite them to speak, which is simply beautiful, which also shows the power of mathematics and connecting. So why is it called square bamboos? And why is it called the geometry? Geometry comes from a beautiful book, The Poetry of the Universe, by Robert Osserman, who was a geometer. And actually, Bennett Palmer, who will also speak today, was a student of his. He said we may picture the product of 3,000 years of geometric inventiveness in the form of a tree, the geometry, and its roots go back very, very long, representing centuries, millennia of discovery and creation. With or without application, the branches and fruits of this tree are worth contemplating as a remarkable product of human imagination. The geometry is healthy, vigorous, in full foliage, older than any redwood and fully as majestic. Beautiful quote, geometry. But on the other hand, there's also square bamboos, because that's where my work started. Let's say around 1993, I was reading about superellipses in a book of Martin Gardner. And actually, I looked I made a connection with square bamboos. There are 20 species of square bamboos in southwestern China. And then 4 years later or so, I could generalize this to what I originally called super formula, to include starfish and various symmetries. But today is a bit of a special day. It's the second symposium. In 1994, the first mathematician that I ever spoke to, explaining these Lamé curves and this idea, was Professor Van Ostaaije. And he will be the first presenter. So it's a bit of a full circle. It's all, like almost 30 years ago. So we're getting a bit old, but but let's say the geometry is in full foliage, but also square bamboos opened a kind of new way of looking and studying natural shapes. I would like first to spend a bit of time on last year. Last year we had the first session of the Square Bamboo Symposium. We had, let's say, 20 to 25 people attending. And actually, the proceedings have been published last week. What is important for me is having these informal meetings, but also being able to publish these books in open access format. So it's accessible to everyone. Everyone can download it. As of today, I forgot last year, because we had lots of Teams problems with Teams, to record the sessions, but I will record now on Zoom, and then we can later put it on a YouTube channel if you agree, just for everybody to follow and know. But the written texts have been published last year, and we managed to have 3 sections. One was geometry, and I was lucky enough to have Bang Yang Cheng as a speaker, which is recognized in the differential geometry quarters as one of the stars. Bennett Palmer, it was very interesting because he was one of the first to apply my formula as an example for constant anisotropic mean curvature surfaces, generalizing the soap bubbles to any, let's say, wolf shape or squares or prisms, and the corresponding catenowids and so on. There are 2 papers on the collaboration of myself and Ilya Tavkelidze, and also Paolo. And this has to do with generalized Möbius listing bodies. And I will tell a little bit about it later. And then ongoing work by Ilya is trying to define what kind of shapes appear after cutting. And then we had also Rivas Grigolia about having 3-valued Gödel logic. And the background of this is that when we started working with super shapes and super ellipses, to combine them in a geometrical way, you can do that via Boolean functions, but R functions, named after Ravchov in Kiev, in Kharkov, translated Boolean combinations into geometric language in a very simple way because it's very related to superellipses. And then, but you cannot only do that for Boolean logic, two-valued, but you can do that for any partition on any, let's say, line, and then you end up with three-valued or n-valued logics, giving more possibilities. So, and then there was also a session with more mathematical papers, but today there will also Paolo will speak tomorrow, and Pino will speak tomorrow. Giuseppe Datoli will speak tomorrow, but they will. This was about Laplace transforms and mixed differential equations and low factorial based polynomials and umbral calculus. But let's say half a year after this, in July, we had also a separate meeting, and it turned out to be that many of these things could be related to studying the logistic equation. So there will be many talks having a differential, or let's say that having the logistic equation as a basis. So because we want also to have so mathematics coupled to something with reality. And then there was something, there were a few, I gave a talk, but there were a few people that applied superellipses in antenna technology and electromagnetic theory with Diego Caratelli. And also Bert Barings, he was actually, Professor Van Ostaaije Fred was the first mathematician I spoke to, and he assigned an informatics student doing computations on superellipses and square bamboos. But later, Bert Barings was a student of mine and of Rudy Penne, which was a mathematician who was a student of Fred Van Ostaaije, so it's a very short thing. And Bert was actually the first engineer that I worked with, and we have a long-standing collaboration of more than 20 years now. So which is, and I think that's very important to have long-standing collaborations. So what was interesting, here are a few summaries. Bangyang Cheng has many topics to talk about, but he focused here on the position vector in the study of manifolds, submanifolds in the sense of manifolds embedded or immersed somewhere, because it has to do with laws of growth in biology, position vector. Then Bennett Palmer discussed the construction of equilibrium surfaces, as I said, a generalization of soap films or soap bubbles. And then the generalized Möbius listing surfaces and bodies, I will tell a little bit more about later. But one way to connect unconnected parts in the plane are so-called R functions. And it's really a very interesting and nice way to combine 3D or higher D manifolds into a, say, with any transition that you want, smooth or non-smooth. So this is this one. Well, anyway, you can always look at all the proceedings are open access, so you can download them and read for yourself. Some of these things will come back later today. Sylvia could not join because, well, she's in the meeting now, but anyway. So, and then the superellipses. As I said, Bert Barings was closely involved in the development of the super formula. And I wanted to have him in the first meeting because I want to establish a kind of historical track record. Because if something is named after me, actually most of the things are done by others. And I want to acknowledge that. And that's the beauty of these collaborations. And actually, in my own article, I focused a bit on, if you look in a very simple way, if you look at the Pascal's triangle and take, not as we do in science, the probabilistic way of taking say the Gaussian and so on. But if you look at the outsides, the X to the end and the Y to the end, that's exactly superellipses. If you combine them via addition, And if you combine them via multiplication, you have all the power laws. And that's the beauty and the simplicity of it. Now we have a second symposium, and I would like to give a short overview of who is what. As I said, Fred van Ostaaien was the first mathematician that I ever spoke to. It was the reason was that I did my thesis in Drie Eiken, and his office was quite close to that. And so his office was the first, and I just entered more or less by accident. But I haven't spoken or seen Fred for like 20 years or more. He's somewhere in Brussels, I think. Could be. But anyway, a long time ago, until let's say half a year ago, I was on track of some new theories that he was starting to publish in books and articles and so on and so forth. His background is higher algebra and non-commutative algebra. Non-commutative geometry. Non-commutative geometry, which is far away from anything that I... Not so far. Not so far, maybe not. But anyway, then I started reading about this time hybrids, a new generic model of reality. And he will present this in a minute. Oh, there's Felix. And he presents this later. It's something that I like very much, because I always think from how will we have our almost our theories of everything according to the physicists, which is of course a bit of, to mathematicians a bit of nonsense, I think. But I always ask myself what happens in 300 or 500 years from now. So maybe they will laugh at us with our flat Earth theories or something that we don't know that. And Fred published something radically new, and he will present this. I hope you like it anyway. So then the second speaker we will move to tomorrow, but actually it's Matthew Hay will come into place. And then Ilya will speak about this cutting of generalized Möbius listing bodies. And then Eren Güler from Turkey, first time that we met, is also on the bridge now. We'll talk about helical hypersurfaces in four-dimensional Minkowski space. Next year, I also have already some speakers of high stature. Among them is Alfonso Romero, specialized in Lorentzian geometry and so on. So, but this is already close to this. Then in an interesting one is wildfire propagation with wind and slope. And that has to do with Finsler geometry. Finsler geometry is, if we walk, let's say in kind of Riemannian geometry, we try to walk on a flat plane or a slightly curved plane. But what happens if you walk upwards with a slope? Then your, let's say, your unit circle is no longer a circle, but would be more elliptical. And I came into contact 5 years ago with Peter Antonelli, who was a geometer and topologist who spent a lot of time in finding applications for Finsler geometry. But he passed away 3 years ago, and also his wife Solange Roots passed away last year. So last year there was a conference in Eindhoven on Finsler geometry, and it was also theoretical, except for one wildfire, and it has to do with what is called the Matsumoto metric. What happens if you walk up and down? And then another person that I met was Dave Thompson. He contacted me because he looked at model quantum systems as tools for learning and how the superformula can play a role in there, in the sense that if you want to study the movement of a particle in an isotropic space, that can be done. But what happens if you put a particle into a square box or a starfish? So we're just learning that. And then Bennett Palmer, as I said, a student of Robert Tosserman, differential geometry, and let's say say the shape of natural and abstract forms. He will talk about this later. I received this presentation, it's going to be wonderful. And then today, Matthew, he was scheduled to be the last, but he will be the second speaker. Actually, he will talk about human thought patterns. And that's something we are just exploring. It's a very wide and open field. Let's see what comes from that. So that's for day one. Day two will be related onto unusual exponential functions and applications to population dynamics. So we see more and more application of mathematics in our group to population dynamics and growth and so on. And also, because I'm involved in an XPower European project with Professor Annie Kuit, who does exponential analysis, she was very interested also to communicate, to connect with Paolo and Pino to see how exponential analysis and other basis functions could be expanded. And then tomorrow also Adela Mihai from Bucharest will speak, that based on a paper that was published this year about Pythagorean submanifolds. Very interesting paper, so that's tomorrow. And then Pino, Pino, Giuseppe Datoli, Professor Datoli will talk about difference equations and discrete logistic processes and algebraic ways to deal with that. And then there will be...
sorry, call me Pino. This is my favorite nickname. I don't want to be called professor also because I am not professor. So anyway, good.
Good. Okay, and then there was an interesting collaboration that evolved over the last, let's say, year. That's with Dominic Chapman. He's a sound engineer, a computer expert. And actually, he had already experimented with N-gun waves. And my reasoning was, in the Nanjing group, more than 40,000 specimens were tested with super formula as a scientific method. So avian eggs, starfish, leaves of trees, seeds, and so on, and flowers. And then my question was, if we see that in shapes, should we not see that in natural sounds? And that's just an open question. So what we're doing now is building a library of sounds associated with super shapes, and then use these sounds to make some music. So it's very different from, let's say, the classical Fourier-like summation of sinusoids. And, so it's a completely open new field. And it's also associated with a composer, Rexley Bunyard, who she has a perfect pitch, a perfect hearing, and she listened to all the sounds, and now she's trying to compose some music with it. So completely new. So, but in the end, we always started in the past. We also started with synthesis. So you type in some numbers and you get a shape. Then we move to analysis. So you get a shape and get the numbers, and then look at optimization. And in this, let's say, sound phase, we're in the synthesis phase, and then we go to analysis. Hopefully, also with the people from XPower as more basis functions. And then there are two talks, one by Diego and one by Yvonne Wu from Delaware University. Yvonne is also part of the XPower project, and she gave a very interesting talk about bones and bone structure and the fractional time derivatives that they use to model this. But that happens to be also fractional calculus was also used by Diego Caratelli and a few of other friends to model frequency dispersive dielectric materials, which could be skin or the cells and so on and so forth. So if we go back, for example, we see let's say in Paolo's and in Pino's talks, logistic equations, also in the talk of Pei Jiangxi. And we see here, let's say, also relations to skins and cells and bones. We see wildfire. We see elastic surfaces, that's also related, we'll show. And then Anyway, what I want to say is that in most of the cases, or in almost all of the cases, it's related closely to biological phenomena. Not always. Some are. Anyway, so what's the time now?